So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists. I handle the public services industry for SAP India and Sri Lanka. And I would like to begin by saying that I'm an IT practitioner with an interest in public security, but I'm not a public security practitioner per se. And hence, my short presentation today, which is typically an hour long, but I'll collapse it to 10-15 minutes, is around how information technology can be harnessed to address integrated incident and emergency management, more so from an Indian scenario. To start, a brief about SAP. In India, it's about almost 17 years since we have started operations, and starting off with our customers. In oil and gas, we now have customers across almost 24 industry verticals. We have the second largest lab outside our headquarters in Waldorf, Germany. And these people are working together in localizing the software for Indian operations, keeping an eye out for changes in the government statutes and promulgations so that they can be put into the software that our customers in India use for competitive advantage and for addressing some of the challenges in the Homeland security area. So from an integrated incidents and emergency management scenario, I'm going to just touch upon the key trends and issues. Some of it has been touched upon by Colonel Das in his last presentation. The SAP solution overview, I would like to articulate that for briefly to you as to what are the typical areas that SAP addresses in this particular space, and why SAP and some of the SAP customers who've kind of endorsed these solutions for public good. So if you look at it, over the last 10-15 years, the entire world, why only India, the entire world has been going through a scenario of unprecedented security concerns. Citizen demands have been increasing. The press has been very active. And there are always reports about how administrators are handling these unprecedented security concerns and incidents which are emerging from time to time. I'm not getting into a debate whether this has been handled well or handled badly. But suffice it to say, we should concentrate on one common thread that's coming out, which is the lack of integration between the different stakeholders who are involved in the process of providing this emergency and disaster management. And this is primarily due to the lack of information flow horizontally across all the stakeholders who are involved in delivering this process, but also vertically within these organizations. So emergency management information systems are evolving as a way by which administrators in the stakeholder agencies can get a common operational picture of the threat situation and can take preventive action. These softwares are generally used in the emergency operations centers, or EOCs, as we would like to call them. And incident commanders in each EOC can then take optimal responder action based on the level and threat of the incident that is emerging. So the issues here is, how do I integrate the information that is coming in for different stakeholder agencies, different intelligence agencies, different authority agencies, including civil defense and other areas, into a common operational picture? How do I develop greater insight and awareness so that I am in a position to filter out the false positives, understand what is the net threat impact to the Indian Union, and then take preventive action based on them. So these are some of the issues which are typically faced by incident commanders, emergency operations centers, incident command managers who are manning these important posts. So this particular slide basically talks about the bottlenecks. One is that you have an incomplete emergency picture. Second is, as I talked about it in the past, disjointed stakeholder coordination or capabilities. Ineffective resource and asset management, because the huge assets which are involved in the entire preparedness, mitigation, recovery process, and the recovery and reconstruction delays as one comes out from an emergency situation. So what SAP tries to address is to remove these bottlenecks from an integrated emergency and disaster management scenario. So our solutions typically span the entire gamut of processes, starting from the agency right up to the responder teams. We typically divide the emergency and disaster management scenario into 4 phases, which is emergency and disaster mitigation, which is the preparedness part of it, emergency and disaster analytics and information management, which is to basically cull out the net threat perception, understand where the feed is coming from, what type of feed it is. Typically, there are audio, video, data, several feeds which are coming into the system. One needs to get an unified view of this information that comes in. Emergency and disaster management, the entire process behind how do I address a particular incident situation. And then the entire recovery process, the rehabilitation process in the post-emergency area. So if you look at the emergency and disaster mitigation area, some of the key issues have been listed out, and they are all well known to you, so I'll not go through them in the interest of time. So basically, SAP tries to address the community preparedness, volunteer management, and critical infrastructure management. This is about how do I make the community ready by doing public awareness drills, by capturing information about intelligence reports, capturing information about what could possibly happen, information from India Met Department, seismological departments, oceanographic department, and trying to understand what are the possible indicators that could possibly lead to an emergency situation. And then deploying and the entire task force about volunteers, and this could be volunteers from the community and this could be volunteers from the involved stakeholders as well, and understanding what is the critical infrastructure that I need to secure. And the entire process of asset management, starting from capturing the asset details, understanding who's responsible for managing it, understanding the hierarchy of management within that critical infrastructure is very important, and it needs to be captured in a unified data source so that when is looking at a common operational picture, one is able to understand and take decisions on the basis of that. So as we move from the disaster mitigation part onto the emergency and disaster analytics and information, we are doing federated search, text analytics, and visualization. This is very important, especially from the fact that there are several types of information that come in. You have information coming in from OB vehicles, which are at different parts of the district, taluks, so on and so forth. Information that is coming in from, safe city projects, CCTV, so on and so forth. Information that is coming in from different intel agencies, information that is coming as videographs or audio reports or even data feeds from several agencies, federating them, understanding what is the common operational picture, throwing them up on a screen, putting a dashboard in place for the responder teams to understand pictorially as to where things are happening, how things are happening, who's responsible, so on and so forth. The information discovery and delivery part, and the enterprise information management, because there's tremendous amount of information that is getting generated that needs to be stored, that needs to be federated, that needs to be partitioned, because once the information comes in and gets stored, you also need to retrieve them for use. So it's very important that you have 3 levels. One is the search level, second is the discovery level, and third is the information management level. So this basically gives you a workflow as to how this process typically takes place from an information technology application phenomenon, in the sense how the federated search works, how the visualization typically works, understanding the relationships between people, objects, locations, and events, the text analysis engines, crawlers, so that it takes information from different sources and gives you the different linkages, and as citizen relationship based model where people can call in, different responders can call in, different agents can call in, their calls can get registered, their calls can get audited, their calls can get recorded. So this is a a snapshot of a dashboard which typically incident commanders use in the command and control center. Much of our solution has been derived from the fact that we are leaders in the defense forces and public security across the world, in the NATO countries as well as the other countries, as well as in India. So emergency and disaster management piece, which is the third piece in our in our solution, starts with firstly GIS enablement, because people want to view data in a spatial format. They would like to see in a map where things are happening. They would like to see different layers in the map, which are the roads which are there leading to that incident, what happens if a particular road can get, what are the alternative roads that are available, what are the assets that are in the vicinity, what are the assets that needs to be secured, who are in charge of them. So all the information that you have in the database, in different data sources, that has to be integrated with the geographical information systems, the maps, so on and so forth, so that you are able to drill down on a particular map and understand the information therein. And then you have the task force deployment. This is something that we've been doing as a bread and butter. I mean, we're doing this for large armies, navies, and the air forces, and we can do that for emergency disaster management agencies as well. And the emergency and disaster case management. Now, case management is a common software that typically gets used right from investigative procedures, prison management, justice and offender management, as well as emergency and disaster management. What it typically does is that different entities involved with a particular incident, they have a life cycle, okay? Their details are captured, their movements are captured, and as they traverse through the legal system or the policing system, they metamorphose into different entities, and these entities have to be matched throughout their life cycle within that. From a prison standpoint, it is about capturing the convict details, understanding who's been the investigative officer, who's been the jail officer, understanding how he's been moved from one jail to the other, what are his personal traits, what are his behavioral traits, so on and so forth, and also capturing information post his release. Similarly, in a case of an emergency and disaster management scenario, understanding the different incidents, matching different events relating to a particular incident, and then trying to find out the relationship between the different incidents across or different entities across different incidents that may happen in a situation. So this is the Emergency and Disaster Interaction Center, which is typically the emergency and disaster interaction for different stakeholders as well as the public. And we have a solution for the Emergency Disaster Interaction Centers entirely based on business communication management stuff that typically call centers use, where people can call in, things can get recorded, it can get intelligently routed to the right stakeholder, so on and so forth. GIS enablement is another thing. SAP integrates very well with the commonly available GIS software that is there, okay? And then the post-emergency situation, which is also very complex and involves a lot of public interaction. And this is where the cookie typically crumbles, is that, there are issues of leakage, pilferage, so on and so forth. So how do you manage victims? How do you manage incident processing? And then managing the financial part of it, which is the grants that come in, aids that come in, procurement and contracts for relief and rehabilitation, and again, the investigative case management, so on and so forth. Why SAP? I mean, we've been having this practice for almost 3 decades now. It has evolved, as I said, from our defense forces and public security, solution footprint. And now we are going across to the National Disaster Management Agency as well as the state disaster management agencies with this solution, trying to understand the standard operations and procedures that have been laid out in NDM and trying to integrate that into our software so that we are more meaningful to our Indian customers. So across the entire gamut of emergency and disaster management scenario, which is to assess the situation, prevent a disaster from happening, prepare for an impending event, respond to that incident, resolve, and then rebuild. We have solutions across the entire process map of an integrated emergency and disaster management. And as we build this solution, this is a living software. as and when new business practices or new best practices come up in this particular area, they get integrated into the software, and the software matures over a period of time. And these are some of the customers that we have worldwide, and these are some of the quotes from our customers. So that's about it from my side. I think I have been on time, so 2 minutes over time. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, once again.